The tourist got too close. He tossed the coin at the feet of a royal guard, as if testing his patience, and with a smug grin, reached out toward the guard's hat, confident that his status as a tourist gave him the right to do anything. The crowd froze in suspense, waiting for a reaction. But instead of the usual silence, a loud voice from the guard broke the tension, not only stopping the brazen man in his tracks, but also forcing everyone to rethink their attitude toward tradition. And when a child was suddenly in danger, the guard broke protocol in a way that changed everything. You wouldn't believe what happened next. London, a grey morning, with a dampness in the air that seemed almost tangible. Crowds of tourists gathered outside Buckingham Palace. Cameras clicked, children laughed, and adults hurried to secure the best spots to capture the legendary royal guards. For most of them, it was just another part of their sightseeing agenda. But for James Farrell, the guard standing motionless at the entrance, it was a matter of honor. James was 28 years old, tall, fit, with sharp cheekbones and a gaze that exuded restraint and discipline. His red tunic was impeccably pressed, and his bearskin hat seemed to accentuate his regal posture. Every breath he took adhered to a strict protocol. He wasn't just standing on duty. He was a living symbol of traditions that had endured for centuries. Among the crowd stood a man who was unmistakably American, Michael. His bright Hawaiian shirt and massive camera slung over his shoulder seemed to scream, "Look at me! I'm the center of attention here!" He laughed loudly, chatting with his friends about how silly the guards looked as they stood there. "Hey, are they even human?" he said, raising his voice to make sure everyone could hear him. Michael stepped closer with a smug grin and shouted, "Hey, buddy, smile! Are you a robot?" His words drew chuckles from the crowd. Some people smiled. Others began recording with their phones, anticipating something unusual. James remained motionless. His gaze stayed fixed in the distance, ignoring the tourists' antics. But Michael wasn't about to give up. He took another step forward and demonstratively tossed a few coins at the guard's feet. "Come on, take it! I know you want it!" he laughed loudly. Tension rippled through the crowd. A few people exchanged disapproving looks, but most kept recording the spectacle on their phones. Someone whispered, "That's going too far." Still, Michael only grew bolder. He took yet another step forward, nearing the line that separated him from the guard, and reached toward James's tall hat. "Let's see if it's real, or just a prop." Then came a sharp, commanding voice from James. "Step back behind the white line." It boomed like thunder, cutting through the noise of the crowd. People froze. Some gasped, while others let out nervous laughs. Michael flinched and took a step back, but he tried to play it off with a forced grin. "Oh, so you can talk. Impressive," he said with a fake smile. The situation began to draw the attention of security personnel. Some tourists backed away, sensing that things could spiral out of control. But Michael wasn't ready to back down. His overconfidence and desire to perform for the crowd only grew stronger. The crowd began to split into two camps, those who disapproved of Michael's behavior and those who quietly encouraged him with whispers and chuckles. But James stood as still as a stone, the embodiment of unwavering honor. The standoff was charged with an intensity that felt like a spark ready to ignite into a blaze. Michael, realizing his antics weren't getting the reaction he wanted, seemed to become even more determined. For him, this was no longer just about having fun. It was a challenge. "Does this guy in the red coat think he's better than us?" Michael thought. No way was he leaving until he got some kind of reaction from this statue. The crowd around them thickened, with people murmuring among themselves. Phones were out, ready to capture a viral moment. Michael felt the growing attention on him, and emboldened by it, he stepped forward. "All right, let's see if that hat of yours is real," he declared loudly, reaching out toward the guard's headgear. This wasn't just a gesture, it was the height of provocation. Someone in the crowd gasped, and another person cried out, "Are you serious? You can't do that!" But Michael just smirked. In his mind, it was all justified. "I'm a tourist. I'm paying to be here. This is for me." And then it happened, something no one expected. Without moving from his post, James suddenly stepped forward sharply. His movement was precise, as though he had rehearsed it countless times. His voice, loud and authoritative, cut through the murmurs of the crowd. "Step back behind the white line." It wasn't just a warning. It was a thunderclap that left Michael momentarily breathless. James's voice was so commanding and firm that even the boldest onlookers instinctively took a step back. The tension had reached its peak. "Oh, wow! You can talk!" Michael tried to joke, but his voice wavered with uncertainty. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. Someone said, loud enough for Michael to hear, "This is too much. Why is he acting like this? Doesn't he understand these people are on duty, not in an amusement park?" Another voice added. Michael pretended not to hear. He felt a twinge of shame, but quickly buried it. Giving up now would mean losing face. Looking down, he spotted a small pebble on the ground. A sly grin spread across his face. He picked it up, as if by accident, and without thinking, tossed it toward the guard, aiming for his boot. This action was the final straw. The crowd erupted. Someone screamed, "Hey, stop it! That's too far!" "Seriously? Now he's throwing things?" Another voice exclaimed. James didn't flinch. His gaze remained steady, but there was an incredible strength in his stillness. It was as if he knew that his resolve was more important than anything else in that moment. Michael, frustrated by the lack of response, shouted, "What kind of soldier are you if you can't even move? Or are you just a puppet on strings?" The mood in the crowd shifted. If some had laughed at Michael's jokes earlier, now most were visibly uncomfortable. "Such disrespect," muttered an older woman in a hat. "He should be punished for this." Michael, however, basked in the moment. For him, this was a performance, and he was the star. "Come on, buddy," he sneered. "Show us something. You can do something, right?" But even as he spoke, his voice betrayed his nervousness. He thought he was in control, but something about James's cold, unwavering silence made him uneasy. Michael had no idea that the crowd would soon turn completely against him, and that his little show would lead to utter humiliation. For now, the tension only grew. Phones continued recording every moment, as people sensed that something dramatic was about to unfold. Little did anyone know, the events to come would be far more shocking than anyone could have predicted. The crowd outside Buckingham Palace seemed solid and unified, but tension had already reached its peak. People whispered among themselves. Some were openly disapproving of Michael's behavior, while others, armed with their phones, continued filming the show. Michael, reveling in the attention, played the part of an actor on a grand stage, convinced that all eyes were on him. But fate was already preparing a very different ending for him. Suddenly, a child's cry pierced through the air. Heads instinctively turned toward the sound. A little boy, no older than 5, had slipped away from his mother's grasp and wandered too close to one of the guard's horses. The large animal, startled by the sudden noise, snorted nervously and shifted its weight, nearly brushing the child. The crowd gasped. The noise fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the boy's cries. In that moment, James, as though breaking through the web of invisible rules, stepped forward. His movement was precise and swift, like that of a professional soldier, yet surprisingly gentle. He approached the boy, scooped him up carefully, and carried him back across the white line. The entire action took no more than a few seconds, but those seconds were filled with dignity, responsibility, and humanity. Once the boy was safe, James gently placed him beside his mother. The woman, sobbing, clutched her son tightly and immediately turned to the guardsman. "Thank you. Thank you for saving my son." The crowd stirred. Applause broke out tentatively at first, but quickly grew louder. People gazed at James with admiration as he silently returned to his post. His stance once again became as solid as a statue, but there was now a subtle warmth in his expression. Michael, who had been watching the scene, initially looked confused. Seeing how the crowd's attention shifted from him to the guard, he tried to make another sarcastic remark. "Oh, so now he's a hero? All he did was save a kid." But his attempt to reclaim the spotlight failed miserably. A woman in the crowd holding her child's hand turned to Michael. "Are you serious? He did something you could never do. Shame on you." Her words cut through the air like a blade. The tension broke, and the crowd erupted into murmurs, then louder comments. "What nerve!" someone shouted. "That guard is a symbol of honor, and you're just embarrassing yourself." "Look at him," another voice chimed in. "He still thinks he has the right to criticize." Michael realized the situation had spiraled out of his control. His face turned red as he fumbled for a response, but the crowd's voices drowned him out. No one was filming him anymore. All the cameras were now focused on James. James stood at his post as though nothing had happened. His silence spoke louder than any words could, and the crowd's reaction made it clear that true strength lies not in provocation, but in the ability to maintain dignity and do what's right when it matters most. This unexpected turn of events left both the crowd and Michael stunned, but most importantly, it instilled a newfound respect for what the Royal Guard represents. James adjusted his bearskin hat and resumed his position at his post, once again embodying discipline and tradition. As if nothing had happened, his expression remained unchanged, but the tension in the crowd had shifted to one of respectful awe. Meanwhile, a palace security officer approached Michael. His face was polite, but his tone was firm. "Sir, you have violated the rules and compromised safety. Please come with me." Michael hesitated, looking flustered. He tried to protest, but his words were drowned out by the murmurs of the crowd. People watched with interest as the officer firmly, yet courteously, escorted him off the premises. Michael's once confident demeanor was visibly deflated. The crowd responded instantly. Someone shouted sarcastically, "Hope your video goes viral so everyone can see how you behaved." Others openly expressed their disapproval. Waves of whispers rippled through the crowd. He deserved that. What a disgrace. How could he act like that? As Michael disappeared from view, the crowd's focus returned to James. Applause began once more, growing louder with each passing moment. A tourist holding a small British flag called out, "You're a real hero!" But James didn't move. He stood still, staring into the distance, his posture as unyielding as ever. Only for a brief moment did his gaze flicker toward the coin Michael had thrown at his feet. For just a second, his face betrayed a faint, almost imperceptible smile. The crowd began to disperse gradually, leaving behind a sense of something greater than just a tourist attraction. For many, the experience had become a lesson. Tradition, respect, and resilience are far more valuable than anyone's attempt to turn it into a spectacle. That day, James proved that honor and dignity aren't just words. He became an example for everyone who witnessed the scene. His duty continued, and he remained ready to protect not just the royal palace, but the ideals of honor and steadfastness that Britain holds dear.